Okay, so I'm going to make this as quick as possible. We're going to go through this PowerPoint presentation. And during this, let me just make sure I have the right one up. You might hear the races in the background because Williams Grove, it's just vroom, 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 vroom. But that's okay. We're going to go through this stuff. And I'm going to, during this, go through the conversation to the best of my ability. Now, I'm going to give you a couple pointers straight up. Like when you get out there on Monday, your focus should be on script and rebuttals, because I'm telling you that like you're not going to be 100% prepared to have this conversation or whatever. The best you can do is prepare yourself as best as you can, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how you do that definitely during this. Now, the first thing I'll say when it comes to preparing yourself for this conversation is focus on vinyl windows. Do yourself a favor and make that like your core focus, because that's probably what you're going to be knocking on. And then focus on having a simplified conversation too. It does not need to be some crazy, complicated situation. I don't think that you should make it too complicated. It does not make sense at all to just make it simple. We'll go through this, then we'll go through that. Okay, so learning the problems. So some of the stuff we talked about. When learning the window problems, think about how they connect to each other. For example, mold leads to rotting, which leads to operational issues. Like we talked about that in training, but you can't have rotting without mold, first of all. So mold comes first, the rotting comes second, okay? But the bigger point is that these things all connect together, okay? So they all connect to each other, and that is the way that you want to converse about them, So Mr. Jones, hey, I just want to point out, I noticed some mold growing in the corners and edges of your vinyl windows here. And it looked like there was some rotting in the sill of the windows. How long have you been dealing with that? Okay, well, whenever I see problems like this, Mr. Jones, it makes me think that the windows are probably pretty difficult to open and close. Would you say that's a bigger problem, or are they more hard to lock securely from the warping? Oh, they're hard to lock shit. Okay, well, and that's probably, sir, like I said, because of the warping. Now, warping will cause a lot of other issues with the windows. Mainly, we'll see some condensation in between the panes of glass. Actually, your neighbor right down the street had that same problem. How many windows do you have like that? Okay, so you just connect these problems to each other. Okay, now again, the first couple of days, dude, if you're out there and you're like, hey, look, I noticed some warping here. How many windows do you have that are hard to open and close? Okay, Mr. Jones, thank you. And your neighbor complained about drafts. How many windows do you have that are drafty? Okay, great. And how long have you been dealing with the mold here, sir? Like that is fine. It's simple. It's fine. Have that conversation, then no problem. Okay. And then when learning the problems, just pay attention to Anderson's solutions too, which we've gone through, and we'll go through a little bit in here. So vinyl windows were developed by Anderson years ago, like we talked about, but they were abandoned because of lack of quality. Lesser quality-driven companies picked up the material somewhere around 1980, like we talked about, and started using it. The idea was that vinyl would be an easy sell because for two reasons: it's very inexpensive, and it's a solution to higher maintenance window problems. So you look at, for example, the car transmission issue that they gave you, the example that I gave. Since the 90s, vinyl windows make up the majority of our business. The average vinyl window will begin to fail within 7 to 10 years, and a lot of vinyl windows would be replaced in 10 to 12 years, okay? Because they have how quickly they start to decline. They don't age well, that's for sure. Because of their low cost, vinyl windows have become the dominant product in both new construction and replacement window markets. So, for example, Anderson Windows might be the largest and most respected window company in the U.S., but for every Anderson style window, there's 100 different vinyl window companies. So that's the reason why they make up the majority of the replacement business. It's very easy, very cheap. Most contractors will use construction grade vinyl windows. However, if you're purchasing windows, as is often the case with most products, the lowest price isn't always the best value. Of course, it's not. You get what you pay for, essentially. Vinyl windows have all sorts of long-term problems, and between 7 to 10, 8 to 10 years is when they'll start to show up. So sale failure is one of the biggest core problems. Okay, now sale failure is, and the best way to describe it is, I wish I had like a sample here to show you or something. Damn. Well, I don't, so it is what it is. But here, I'll just use these. You look closely. So, there's two pieces of glass in the window, okay? Two pieces of glass like that in the window, okay? And there's a seal in between there, okay? There's a spacer, and then it's sealed. The glass sails to the spacer like that, okay? Which is then inside of the window, right? So if you were to cut your window open, then you'd see it look like this, okay? Like in between glass like that, okay? When the seal breaks, when the seal breaks down, moisture will get inside, and that causes the fog in the glass. Now, here's the thing is that a lot of people, that's the first problem that they want to go with, because it's so clear and evident when you see it, and it's such a significant issue, but it only occurs on a small amount of vinyl windows because it's such a significant problem that when that problem starts to happen, people usually take action on their windows, and that's when they'll go to get them replaced. So you'll run into that problem. Here's what will happen is you'll go to a neighborhood, and if you see that problem on one house, then you'll see it on, 15 or 20 other houses. But you could go to, 10 neighborhoods in a row where none of those problems exist, and they just don't have them. Maybe there's this one guy down the street that had it because a rock hit his window and he didn't realize it was a little crack or something like that. But there's not a significant amount of windows like that. So you just got to be cautious about a problem like that, for example. Now, the window expands and contracts, it really warps, doesn't expand and contract as much because it is plastic. That's sort of a typo, but it warps, and it leads to air infiltration. And you'll see this show up, especially like what will happen is the window will be sitting on the sill, right? Like that would be how the window sits on the sill, how you want it to sit on the sill, flat. As a matter of fact, I'll use this example again. This is the window, my hand is the sill. You want it to sit flush, but if you see it just bagging up a little bit like that, okay, on either side, all right, maybe just, slightly, you'll see gaps in the window caused by warping of the product or poor installation. And that will cause airflow, and it could cause water to leak in and out of the window as well. But mainly airflow would be the biggest concern there. Okay, so make sure you take note of that. Now, the same warping can cause the window to become hard to open and close. Now, vinyl windows will also, a lot of people don't realize that they're not strong at all. So they can't support the glass. When we talk about this, the glass is the heaviest part of the window. And so what ends up happening is if you don't keep your windows locked, mainly if you don't keep your windows locked, that's why there's 2 locks on every vinyl window. If you don't keep your windows locked, then it will start to bow down, and you'll start to see it. We call it a smiling window because the locks will sort of not be connected. Okay. And then you'll start to have problems with that. Okay. You'll lose visible glass space as well because they're extremely thick. The windows are extremely thick when they make them. So replacement vinyl windows are a bad option because of that. Okay. So your new construction vinyl windows are very thin frame, thin sash windows, and they grow problems a lot quicker. Replacement windows last maybe for a couple more years typically, but they have very thick sashes and frames that make them look extremely ugly. People don't like the look of them at all. Okay. Sun damage causes a lot of the problems with vinyl windows. Oxidation is a key word. Remember that word, oxidation. Okay. Oxidation of the plastic. That oxidation of the plastic will start to break down because of a couple different factors. Air. Okay. Now think about these things. Okay. That break down plastic, right? These are all of the things that break down plastic. I'm not picking and choosing things that affect windows. All of the things. Now you think about the things here that do affect windows. Okay. Air. Okay. The air outside or whatever will cause problems. Water. Okay. So both those two things, sun. Okay. And light. All right. Specifically sunlight, UV rays. All right. And heat. Cold can sort of affect it as well, but mainly the heat will affect it. The changes from cold to hot. Acids and alkalis in the rain will also affect it. So all of that stuff is stuff that your windows are inherently gonna have, right? They're gonna have those problems no matter what. And so again, this is the reason why we talk about this is such a problem. Okay. Now warping will happen, discoloration will happen as well. The white windows will start to turn yellowish. You start to see it will look chalky as well, right? Like if you went up and wiped your finger across it, you'd have like this white chalky stuff all over your finger. It's kind of gross. Because of warping, they'll become difficult to open and close. They'll become difficult to lock, which is dangerous. Glass impaction will happen as well. Now, glass impaction is something we didn't talk a lot about, okay? But it's one of the most common problems that you can find in vinyl windows. The material will warp and push the glass, okay? And, your glass will go and warp slightly, okay? Now, obviously, it's not going to warp like that. That'd be pretty extreme, right? It's not that bendable, but it will warp slightly. Now, what happens is, like, if I look at this picture frame here that's next to me, okay, this picture frame, and you might not be able to see it as well. I'm sure you won't be able to see it as well, but this, you can see a perfect reflection, right? So you can look at that and you can see a good reflection. Okay. It's not warped at all. Now, obviously it's through a picture, so it's not going to be that great of a thing, but you're going to see a reflection that's straight up, right? Let me put this thing back now. Jeez, I don't know why I had to do that. That was stupid, but it makes a good point. Oh, great. Now I can get it back up. Fantastic. There we go. Okay. That painting is by Keith Hunter Jesperson. So if you, or that drawing, whatever. So that's a perfect image relatively, like you can see very clearly the image. If that was warped, like picture a funhouse mirror, okay? That is how glass impaction works in a vinyl window, okay? Now, you can tell if you look at the reflection of your vinyl window that you're looking at, okay? What I always look at is for the power lines across the street, and I always look at the trees across the street, okay? And if that stuff's all crazy and wavy and stuff, that means that there's glass impaction typically, okay? The only exception would be in like a renewable iris window, for example, tempered glass will also cause that wave. But, if you're looking at windows that are, like head length or whatever, unless they're down to the bottom of the ground, then they're probably not tempered glass and it's going to be glass impaction. So it's safe to say that, if you call this problem out and they're vinyl windows, and that's going to be the reason why it shows up, okay? So besides warping, the vinyl windows will also start to crack as well, okay? Because the material gets weak, and so they're able to crack significantly. Of course, here are some of the pictures of what I was talking about. I didn't use my card holder after all. I could have just waited for the pictures here, but we'll go through these pictures in a second after we read about them. So the sale failure, again, okay, we read about these problems in the office, but sale failure, you can read along on this PowerPoint, or you can read along on your training manual. The sale failure causes condensation, okay? And the sale failure causes draftiness. The condensation does not cause the draftiness, okay? That's a common misconception. The condensation is not the reason for the lack of energy efficiency. The lack of energy efficiency exists because that gas has left the window, and there's a direct, energy issues because of the sun blaring down, the cold air getting into the windows, okay? Because of the warping, operational issues, they'll become hard to open and close and lock securely. And then glass impaction, like we talked about, will also become an issue. Because the vinyl window frames are cheap and flexible, relatively, they'll start to sag if they can't handle the weight of the glass, and because the temperature changes, okay? Expand and contract, again, is a generous word. I'd say warping is probably the best word for it. That will cause bowing on the middle piece of the glass. Now, you can always see this bowing. If you look at the top picture here, okay, this guy is holding a yardstick, okay? And if you go look at the Chicago Window Expert, okay, it's like a separate website, has nothing to do with us. He does not replace with vinyl windows. He does a lot of great work on vinyl windows, but he's a contractor from Chicago, has a lot of great videos up on YouTube and stuff like that, where he shows some of the problems with vinyl windows and other kinds of windows as well. But he's holding a yardstick up, okay? And the vinyl window is sort of sagging. I'm going to try to get this guy to come speak to us over Zoom or something like that. The window on the bottom, okay, is a warping vinyl window that's tilted, and that is showing that problem that I was showcasing for you with the warping, where either because of installation, now I know that window on the bottom is 2 years old, because I remember that from a posting this guy was talking about, at least the guy says it's 2 years old, where the guy was talking about how bad his 2-year-old windows were. Now, because they're 2 years old, that's probably an installation issue, but you know what? It very well could be a warping issue too, but that causes it to be off kilter like that, and you get the airflow from the outside to the inside of the home. Okay. And we talked about the hard to lock securely. That's what this is showcasing here. I'll show you how to look for that as well. Operational issues are absolutely an annoyance, but they can also be much more of a dangerous problem. For example, if the windows don't lock securely, that's how I'd bring it up to a customer, okay? Operational issues take place due to warping in the frame of the window, warping in the frame, or warping in the sash as well, which causes the locks not to line up, or issues with opening and closing the window. Because the window is no longer sitting correctly in its frame, it is no longer airtight, which means there'll be energy efficiency concerns. Okay, now what this is again showcasing is a window that does not lock properly. Okay, now this window is sort of weird. You can typically see from the outside. Okay, you can typically see from the outside when a window does not lock, because what you'll be able to see is that the hook will be over the latch. Okay, so the window, the top part will kind of sag down. Okay, below the bottom part. And then that gets difficult to lock securely, okay? All right, condensation and mold. Okay, so you see condensation in glass here. These are some great examples of it. Moisture okay, we'll go over that in a second. Moisture between your window panes is a sure sign that somehow the seal on your glass window has failed. We talked about how it would happen. window glass is sealed into the frame of your window, which we explained. If the seal gets punctured or begins to deteriorate, then the argon gas, which is the insulating gas between the panes, will leak out, okay, causing you to lose energy efficiency. Moisture will get inside of there, and it will again cause the fog inside of your glass, okay? Again, the warping is what typically causes this because of temperature changes and so on and so forth. The moisture creates a perfect environment for mold growth, which it does, okay? Now, mold's a scary word, and it's ugly. I would not call it dangerous if you have some mold in your vinyl windows. It's not a dangerous issue, okay? So I mean, it's a little bit of mold. It's not like people are not going to feel that if you're trying to tell them that little bit of mold is dangerous, okay? Now, the bottom picture probably displays mold. A lot of times, though, it's not mold that's in this glass when the moisture gets inside there. It's the aluminum or steel, the oxides in the glass. It's those rotting or deteriorating that causes that. You'll see like a white, milky film substance, okay, or a yellow film substance, and that will cause that as well. So there's stages to this condensation. It starts off as a little bit of moisture, okay, looks kind of foggy. And when that dries up, you'll see this film formation on it. It looks like someone took a bottle of milk and poured it in there and it just stuck like that, okay? Does not look fantastic. Will hurt the home value and so on and so forth as well. Now, these are some pretty extreme pictures, but they do show the problem. So we'll talk about, why these are extreme and why these would not be glass impaction issues. We'll talk about that, but they do define what glass impaction would look like. So that's a good thing. Okay. So glass impaction is ultimately caused by, sorry, just got a text I needed to look at real quick. Oh, whatever. I can look at that after. I don't have time for that right now. So glass impaction is caused by the warping. Okay. And that will, it's caused by the warping, not really caused by the broken seal. A broken seal can happen because of it. Vinyl expands, and it does expand 7 times farther than the glass with each degree temperature. So this will cause, a vacuum and whatnot. It will distort the glass. Okay. And now what will happen is if you see extreme weather changes, like we see sometimes a jump between, 75 and 50 overnight or something like that, then you'll see this expansion contraction. Okay. You will see this warping of the product, this extreme warping of the product, and that can crack the windows. Okay. So what you're looking at here, okay, this bottom picture might be glass impaction. Okay. Although it could just be, custom glass in this window or something like that too. But that will be how it shows up. Definitely. Okay. It just looks like it might be a newer window with more of like a mirror effect in it, but maybe not. This right here would be tempered glass. I would have to imagine it's industrial glass. I believe this is in a tall building, but it does. That's what glass impaction will look like. Okay. And the cracking is what will occur because of glass impaction. If all of a sudden you have like random cracking that happens in your window, you'll talk to customers sometimes where customers will say, I don't know what happened, but I got a huge crack in my window now. That's probably because of the glass impaction. Okay. So because the cheaper quality of vinyl windows and the temperature changes, direct sunlight causes the windows to warp and bow out of shape, causing the loss of integrity of the small window, and small gaps will form. These gaps will allow air to pass through and potentially water as well. And there's 2 problems with drafts, which is energy efficiency and comfortability. Okay. And I'll bring both of these up to customers: energy efficiency and comfortability. Both those things are important. Okay. Now, lack of insulation is another reason why these drafts will occur. And that could come in 2 forms. Okay. It could be the argon gas in the glass is gone. It's usually the case, but also could just be because the insulation wasn't done properly, or the windows are just low quality windows. They allow for gaps and holes and whatnot. Maybe lack of insulation around the window will happen during insulation, and this will allow for drafts to come in and whatnot. That's why, putting new glass packs, for example, which would be like the glass inside the sash, does not usually fix permanently the problem in like a vinyl window, for example, because the problem's usually more underlying with the vinyl window. My allergies are killing me. Okay. All right. So this is what I've been kind of waiting to get to. Okay. And I think that this could be broken up a little bit differently. We'll talk about that as we get to it. Like, all right, I'm just going to give you the example here. Sun damage should probably go right here. Okay. because warping will be caused by sun damage as well. These two things should probably connect and whatnot. And oxidation, all right, will cause other problems like, ugliness. It will cause the warping as well. So we'll talk about that stuff as we go. But this is a general breakdown of how the problems connect. That looks confusing. Whenever we'd have people write it out, it'd be easier because they could connect them themselves and it would make a lot more sense. But we'll go through this as best as we can. So vinyl windows, okay, will be affected mostly by sun damage and weathering damage. I think weathering damage even could be under one big kind of bucket, but the sun and the heat is usually where that stems from. These allergies are killing me right now. So that sun damage, okay, will cause oxidation, which we talked about. Okay, we talked about all these problems at this point now. Oxidation is a breakdown in the vinyl material. Now, if you want to look at other ways oxidation would form in other products, I suggest you go to Google and type in plastic oxidation. Okay, again, Google plastic oxidation, and you'll see what I'm talking about in everyday products that you use where you're like, damn, that kind of looks ugly now. I don't know what's going on with that. The plastic oxidation is what is probably going on with that, right? So if you have like a car, for example, that's mostly made out of plastic, an older car, and you start to see that like your red car has started to turn like kind of nasty red. It gets all kind of again like chalky. It looks like the paint's sort of peeling out from within it. It's a gross look. Look it up, and you'll see that you've seen it on cars before. Okay. The plastic lawn furniture I always use as a great example. If you got like the white plastic lawn furniture, you go outside, a year after you get it, and you go to sit down and you're like, man, this kind of feels nasty. And you get some white chalky stuff on you, some little black mold dots start to show up all over it. You can't wash it off. It just kind of is like that. That's the oxidation in the same exact material as the vinyl window. I always akin it to this, right? I got a bunch of these. Like the Funko Pops, for example, right? This is literally called a Funko Pop vinyl, right? Like the word vinyl is probably on here, right? A million times. Okay. So, if you took this guy, he's all different, Rob Zombie here, he's all different colors and stuff like that. And you stuck him outside out of the package for, 2 years, 12 years, whatever. How do you think that would look in a couple of years? It would not look too good, right? Just as an example there. Okay. Stephen King might look better. I'm just kidding. I got the Stephen King one up there too. He might look better than he does now. So the sun damage will cause warping as well. The oxidation will help out with that as well. Okay. And that will cause a bunch of different problems. Okay. So that can cause glass impaction. Okay. The warping of the glass, like we talked about. Okay. And that can cause broken glass, actually, not really a broken sail, but broken glass, which ultimately, if the glass is broken, the sail is broken. So drafts can cause because of the warping itself. Okay. The broken sail ultimately will cause condensation and fog in the glass, okay, which will cause an ugly look, can cause mold, okay, as well as just kind of a nasty coloring of the windows. Now, these things all make the window not energy efficient and uncomfortable, and the energy bills go up because of that lack of energy efficiency, okay. Warping will also cause operational issues. The windows will become hard to open and close, hard to lock securely. And that's a security issue. And it's an energy efficiency issue as well, which is not on here. When the window does not lock properly, it's not pulled tight. You need that to be pulled tight. When you latch it, the weather stripping, it's pulled together and it causes the seal to form and weather won't get in there. Okay. But when that's open, go unlock your windows right now and see what happens. If the weather stripping is good, then it will kind of separate. Okay. You'll see them separate from each other. Okay. If the lock is not the only thing that does that, they'll separate. Okay. Now, if they're older wooden windows, that's probably not going to happen. There's probably no weather stripping in there. It's probably not as tight, but the vinyl windows will separate like that. Okay. That will cause you to lose, up to 30% of your energy efficiency in that window. And so, that's why, like in the wintertime, if you're cold, make sure your window's locked. It's the first thing that you can do. Okay. Then you see like, the windows are built cheap. And I actually think that you could probably classify most of this stuff in the fact that the windows are built cheap too. Okay. You've seen the funky warranty stuff. You can go to, there's certain companies you can go to, type in lifetime vinyl window warranty, and you can see all the funky language in them and whatnot. But a lot of times when these things are installed, they're installed into old rotting frames. Okay, so that doesn't help them much neither. And they actually can cause the frames to rot more. See, one thing that's not talked about in here as much as that is something called weep holes, okay, which I got to put in here. Now on a vinyl window, okay, there's something called weep holes on every single one. It's a drainage system for the vinyl window. So water gets inside of the vinyl window, which I'll show you guys actually here soon. I'll make sure that I'm gonna make another video that kind of goes through. As a matter of fact, I have another video that goes through the different pictures right on here. You can look back one video or two videos and you'll see it. We'll say like window pictures or something or other. You can go through that as well, okay? But the moisture will get inside of the frame and inside of the frame of the window and will start to rot out the wood. Okay, so that's definitely something that you want to point out if you see rotting around the frame of a vinyl window. Remember the thick and ugly white frames that look all glossy? Not very good. That those lose glass space. That should be tied in with that as well. Okay. This is showing me that I need to kind of revamp some of these things here because they need to connect in different ways, but we'll go through that. So, you know, we talked about the solutions in the office, but we have a Fibrex material. It's a composite of vinyl and recycled wood. Okay. When you melt those two materials together, it won't warp or fade like vinyl does. It resists mold growth, unlike vinyl. It doesn't get affected by that weather or sunlight, and it stays tight. Okay, that's the big thing about this. It stays very tight. Okay, stronger glass and hardware makes it easier to lock the windows for a longer period of time. You're not going to have to deal with the problems. We only require one lock, not two. They're also easier to tilt in to clean. Okay, much easier. There's no like crazy system to tilt in to clean. Like my windows here have like these different. I don't even know what these do tilt in to clean. I guess they got like little clasps and stuff like that on them. But on my windows here, which are just vinyl crap windows, gonna get them replaced if I'm going to stay in the house. They have like all this hardware that you can see that's on the outside that doesn't really work properly. It's ugly. They don't look good, and they just like they suit their purpose, I guess, temporarily. But I can hear all the noise coming in from them, and that's something that's not talked about in here too. That definitely got to adapt is the noise reduction that will happen because of a renewal by Andersen window is absurd, you know. So definitely something to talk about, especially when you see people that are on railroads, airports, racetracks around here is a big thing. When you talk to like, let's say an older couple and you see there's like a barky dog next door or like a bunch of kids next door or something like that. I love my church, but you know, they go off like, you know, 5 times a week or whatever, and you can hear everything that goes on there. I want to hear it one time. I don't want to hear it, you know, several times, right? So that would be a solution for something like that. I like to go to the later service, not the early one for that reason, right? And then we do have a good warranty as well, which is fantastic. Okay. So this has been vinyl windows. Okay. We're going to go over wood windows next, but I do want to kind of cut off this video here. So that way we can go through the wood windows after again, kind of separately. Okay. Because vinyl windows these are the most common things here. So let's do this. Let's do a couple of things real quick. I'm going to try to find here. Let me see. Okay, so we're going to go through this conversation part. I got to get up. Oops, that's not what I tried to do. Captions and subtitles. Oh no, now it's typing everything on the screen that I say. That's kind of cool though, that it does a pretty good job with that. That's pretty crazy. Don't want that though. I want to end the show. There we go. I need to get in here, share the screen with you folks again. And we are going to get on the conversation. Okay. Now we talked about this in the office, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this at all. Keep it simple. Keep it simple right now. Okay. So the questions to ask, okay, how many is a popular question, to give you a couple examples of that. And we're going to breeze through this now, okay? And then I'm going to go through a couple sample conversations, okay? We're only focusing on vinyl because, like I said to you in the beginning of the video, that's what I'm going to focus on right now, okay? Keep it simple, and this is how you keep it simple. We'll go through wood training and stuff like that. I went through it with you guys once. We'll go through it again. I'll make another video on that. That's fine. But I want this to be as quick as possible so you're not watching 4 hours of video, and I'm sure that you'll appreciate that this weekend, okay? So you can watch this a couple times if you need to, and then you can just focus on that. I'm going to go through some sample conversations at the end of this too. I'm going to start with very rudimentary conversations, and then I'm going to go into So maybe something more advanced. Okay, so you'll see first the conversations that I expect right now when you're with customers, and then the conversations that you'll eventually have with customers. How many windows do you have that are blank? Okay, so there's some examples here. Look at Mr. Jones. Most of your neighbors have been complaining about drafts. How many windows do you have like this? Extremely rudimentary question. Okay, now you might, if you want to do a more advanced version of that, you might say something like, look at Mr. Jones, I just want to point out that I did set up an appointment for Mrs. Smith right down the street earlier. Okay, and Mrs. Franklin right down the street over here, he had said that his windows were drafty as well. As a matter of fact, most of your neighbors have complained about drafts so far today. So how many windows do you have that are drafty, Mr. Jones? Okay. How long is the same premise? Okay. Most of your neighbors have been complaining about mold in the sills of their windows. How long have you had this problem? Okay. You might say, walking up, Mr. Jones, I couldn't help but notice some mold in the windows here, especially in the corners and edges of the windows. How long have you had this problem? Okay. Another way to ask this question, by the way, too, and write this down because it's going to expand your knowledge of how you can ask the questions, would be like, so, Mr. Jones, I saw walking up that you had this problem there. How long would you notice that problem? Okay. How long would you notice that issue? Okay. That's also a good way to ask. That's not yes or no. Okay. We talked about the whole forced choice thing, and you're giving people choices is the whole point. A couple examples. Sir, walking up to your home, I noticed that you were experiencing issues with rotting. Now, rotting can cause a lot of different issues, sir. Two of the most common are opening and closing the windows or locking the windows. What's a bigger issue for you? Now, this is a more difficult way to do this. It definitely is a more difficult way to do this. So again, we're building a conversation here. You can skip the forced choice for a couple days probably, and then you can get more involved with that. So, another way, like let's say the person said they had drafts. Okay, great. Now you have a great way that you can enter this conversation. Well, sir, you said your windows are drafty. Would you say it's more of an energy efficiency concern or a comfortability concern? Okay, what's more important to you, essentially? Okay, and you can even ask that question too. I'll ask you, so, sir, if you had to point out one thing that was important to you, would you say that it was opening and closing your windows properly or like tilting your windows in a clean? What's a more important thing for you? It's another way that you can ask that question as well. And finally, pointing to a yes. Basically, a yes or no question, but you're giving them evidence, and whatnot. And again, pretty rudimentary as well. So this would be something that I suggest you use on a basic level, even day one. Okay. So, Mr. Jones, most of your neighbors have had issues with like mold in their windows. I'm guessing you must have the same issue. So, walking up to your home, I couldn't help but notice a great deal of glass impaction here, which is a warping of your glass. Now, this has to have caused you concern, right? You could say like, so has this caused you concern? Or have you not even noticed it before? Because yeah, they're going to say I haven't noticed it before, probably. But then you go, okay, well here I'll point it out to you, and then show them. Right? It's a very simple process there. Okay, and this can get as complicated as you want it to be. Backing stuff up with evidence. Sir. I'm sorry, I was walking up to your house, and like the first thing that really super stood out to me is that there was a significant amount of rotting in the sills of your windows. Now, usually when I talk to people about that, they've noticed a great deal of mold, or sometimes windows like hard to open and close. What would you say is a bigger problem for you, right? That's last point into a yes. That's the forced choice thing, but you're giving evidence behind something and then asking the question. Now, another way that I see people ask all the time, and it's not in here, but it is a great way to ask, is what area of the home, and make sure you write this down. What area of the home have you dealt with this more in, right? So you could say something like, sir, I see the front of your house gets a lot of sun. Okay. Warping, sir, is a concern for most people with vinyl windows. Would you say it happens more in the front of the home or the back of the home? Okay. All right. And what room would you say gives you the most drafts, sir? The kitchen, the living room? Okay. What room do you spend the most time in, Mr. Jones? Oh, okay. So I'm guessing that's the room that's probably the biggest concern for you. Okay. That's another great way to ask. Okay. So we've now given you 6 or 7 ways to ask these questions. Now, why is it important that you have these different ways to ask these questions? Well, the reason why that's important is because you don't want to ask the same question over and over again with a different problem attached, right? So I'm going to pull up these pictures right now that I did go over already in a different thing, but I'm going to use a couple windows to give you an example conversation. Okay. Just find them real quick. Okay, and these are not all going to be vinyl windows. They're going to have some sort of vinyl element to them. Now, again, if you want these full conversations, detail all these windows, go look at the other video to watch it. but I'm gonna do a couple. This is gonna be the basic one that I use. Okay, this is actually an Anderson window. It's a very old Anderson window. It's a vinyl clad window. Okay, so I'm actually gonna use this as the example for my house. I'm in front of Mr. Jones' house and I see this window here. I see this window here, and I see this window here. I'm actually gonna focus on these two though. Okay, so I knock on the door. Good afternoon, Mr. Jones. Great. My name is Paul Duffy. I'm with Renewal by Anderson. We just did some work for Mrs. Smith right over on 123 Main Street. The reason why I'm out here is that I noticed he had the original Anderson windows. How long have you lived in the home? Actually, we moved in like 2 years ago. Okay, well, congratulations on the relatively new home. That's awesome. You from the area? I got to wrap this up pretty quickly. So I'm going to just give a couple examples quick. Yeah, actually, I've been living here for a little while. So I just moved from down the street. Okay. All right, Mr. Jones. Well, I just want to point out a couple things to you real quick. Walking up, I noticed that there was a great deal of what looked like discoloration here of the windows. It looks like they had faded quite a bit. Have you noticed that before, Mr. Jones? No, I don't pay much attention to the windows though. Yeah, so if you look up here, you see the overhang that you have here. Okay, right underneath there, you'll see like a darker gray color, and then it quickly goes to like a lighter gray. It almost looks like chalky, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, that's the oxidation in the material, sir. The material is breaking down because of the sunlight. Okay. Now I noticed the cracking in the middle of the window here too, sir, like the middle of the casement windows here. How long ago did you start to notice that? I don't know. I mean, it's been like that since before we moved in for sure. Okay. And has the weather stripping been hanging out of the window as well? It's been like that. Like I know they're not great windows for sure. Okay. Now, what would you say is a bigger concern for you, sir? Then, like the drafts, or like hot and cold spots? Like what do you experience more of? I mean, I guess just a little bit of hot and cold spots. They're really not that bad. Probably because of Anderson, sir, right? I'm just kidding, sir. But yeah, they are definitely old. I mean, they've definitely, they've definitely dated themselves. Okay. That being said, sir, you do know you're going to have to do something with the windows in the next couple of years. May I make a suggestion? Okay. That's a basic conversation. Okay. Basic conversation. 1 second here. I just pause one second. What's going on inside my house? But it sounds like there's somebody shooting a machine gun. It's crazy. All right, so this is one example. Okay, now if I want to go full bore in this conversation, okay, I'm going to give you the example of what I could use. Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Jones. Great, Mr. Jones. My name is Paul Duffy. I'm with Renewal by Anderson. We just did some work for one of your neighbors, actually, right down the street, Mrs. Smith, over on 123 Main Street. Now I'm out here, sir, because I noticed that you had the original Anderson windows. Sir, how long have you lived in the home? We've been here for 30 years. Okay, so are you the original owners of the home? No. The house was built probably 40 years ago. We're the second owners. Oh, okay, cool. Well, it's a beautiful home you have here, sir. It looks like you've done over a lot of work with the home. So you said you've been here for 30 years and you haven't replaced the windows. They're definitely original to the home then, sir. I just want to point out a couple of things that I saw. First, sir, I noticed some rotting around the sills of your windows here. How long ago did you start to notice that? It couldn't have started happening too long ago. I'm sorry. Where do you notice that? Well, sir, you see where the wood on the top of your window here is starting to wear down. The paint is starting to peel off, and you can see a discoloration in the wood, sir. So how long ago did you start to notice that? I guess I really haven't noticed it before, but honestly, I don't pay too much attention to the windows here. So yeah, I'm glad you pointed out. I never noticed it before. Okay, sir. Yeah, it looks like there's just some general wear on the windows. I mean, Anderson windows will last for a long time. So, I mean, the average lifespan of an Anderson window is probably somewhere between 20 and 30 years. And these have been in your house for, like you said, like 40 years. So it makes sense that they start to experience these problems, sir. Now, on the inside of these windows here, I noticed that there was some water damage, it looked like, on the sill, on the inside of the windows here. Do you know why that would have happened, sir? No, I mean, sometimes there's water that sits in the sill on those bottom windows. I don't pay much attention in the basement, but that's probably why. Okay. Does it like pool up, sir, when there's like a lot of moisture, or like in the wintertime or something like that? Yeah, in the wintertime, you typically see it. Okay. And I'm guessing that you get some fog on the inside of the glass, sir. Okay. Well, these windows can't be very energy efficient, so that must be why it's happening. Now, these were all put in at the same time, right? Because they're original, right? Okay, yeah. All right. So they're probably all experiencing some sort of energy loss. Sir, what area of the house do you feel like is most drafty? Would that be like the front of the home, like we're looking at now, or is the back of the home actually worse? Um, I don't know. I haven't seen much draft, but I guess the front of the house, I guess. Okay. Well, there's some clear issues here, sir, that I want to point out. You see that the window's cracking, the material's starting to break down. How long ago did that start happening? The guy was up cleaning them or whatever, and he cracked a couple of them. And, I guess we just never got to fixing it. I mean, we'll do them at some point in time, just not right now. All right. So that probably happened because over time, the vinyl material will start to break down. You'll start to see what's called the fireworks outside. It's called oxidation on the material. And that's why the material here looks so chalky. And you see the discoloration, sir. Now that happens over a short period of time, typically. So this has been happening for a while now. Do you know how long it's been since these kind of have been discolored and fading and whatnot? No, I really don't know. Okay, and the reason why you're getting a little bit of draft, sir, is because the weather stripping is hanging out of the window there. Look, I'll tell you what, sir, it looks like you're going to have to do something with the windows in the next couple of years. May I make a suggestion? Okay, so that's a much more advanced conversation, all right? And it is tough to pitch yourself and play customer, but you can practice this way. Well, you just got to ask the right questions. That's the key, okay? And we'll do this one last window here, okay? This is a basic vinyl window that's, I don't know, 7 to 12 years old, somewhere in that range, okay? It's not super old. The sills are old. A couple things I want to point out here. First, before I even get to that, so I just want to point out one thing on a different window because I can see it more prominently on like this window, for example. You see these holes, this window is all kinds of screwed up, and you can watch my description of this window back in the other video, but you see this little hole right here. And then it's on the other side, it's the same thing right here, okay? Those are the weep holes I was talking about where water can flow into the sill because typically this would be covered up. So that's a pretty big problem with vinyl windows. But we're not going to, go over that too much right now. We're going to focus on these windows because these windows, you walk up to this house, and if you're a new person, then you're going to have a lot more of a problem pulling out a conversation with these windows than that other one, just because there's not a ton of defined problems. Okay. So if I knock on this door, this is my basic conversation. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Paul Duffy and Mr. Jones. Great, Mr. Jones. I'm with Renewal by Anderson. We just did some work for Mrs. Smith right down on 123 Main Street. The reason why I'm out here, sir, is it looked like you had the replacement windows here, but they were about 10 or 15 years old. How long have you lived in the home, sir? Oh, we just moved in actually like a couple of months ago. Really? What, like June-ish? Yeah. Oh, man. So you hit the housing market at an interesting time then. Wow. Well, it's a beautiful purchase. And I guess if you're going for your dream home, then, it's worth whatever, right? Absolutely. Yeah. So excellent, sir. Well, look, I want to point out a couple of things here. You got the home inspected, obviously, when you bought it. Okay. And did the home inspector mention any? They said yes. Okay. The home inspector mentioned any problems? No, they didn't say anything about the windows. Okay. Yeah. And a lot of times they won't catch things like windows, sir, because it's more of like an optional thing. At some point you got to replace them, but I've seen much worse windows than this not get it, picked out by a home inspector. I did want to point out a couple of things I noticed, sir. You see how the top of the glass here is warping to a pretty extreme degree? No, what do you mean? Yeah, so the top pieces of glass here, you see how the reflection's all distorted, like a funhouse mirror? Okay, now that's called glass impaction, sir. See, the vinyl material is starting to warp, and it's pushing that glass, okay? Now, eventually it will break over time, but even still, this is probably affecting the energy efficiency. Now, sir, what would you say, where do you see experience more drafts? Like in the front of the home right here, or like the back of the home? Oh, no, I mean, I forgot. Well, no, I just moved in, so I really have no idea. That's what would probably come up there. Oh, yeah, you moved in June. You haven't felt drafts yet. Okay, well, I'll tell you, sir, that with my experience, my thing is that I would suggest that you'd probably experience drafts up here in the front pretty significantly. Now, I want to point out one more thing up here, sir. Did you look at the frame of the windows, sir? First of all, it looks like the windows, there's a lot less glass space and a lot more room taken up by the windows. And that's because these are vinyl replacement windows put into older wooden frames. Now, if you look at the bottom of the window, so you'll notice some, looks like rotting, or at least some wear on the wood, the bottom of the sill here. My guess is that, and I'm telling you this just because you just moved in. So that's why I'm not asking, but I really should just tell you that. That's why I'm telling him, not asking him. So the water would get into the windows, sir, and it would actually get into the sill itself. So these windows are going to actually potentially cause the windows to rot more. They're definitely not going to make them rot, go back to form. Okay. So here's my suggestion, sir. Or you could say, so do you mind if I make a suggestion, sir? Or, look, sir, I know that you just moved into the home, but may I make a quick suggestion? And then you go into your next part. Okay. All right. The more advanced conversation, which I kept wanting to break the fourth wall there and get into the advanced conversation. So, hey, good afternoon, sir. My name is Paul Duffy, Mr. Jones. Great, Mr. Jones. I'm with Renewal by Anderson. We just did some work for Mrs. Smith right over down on 123 Main Street. The reason why I'm out here, sir, is because I noticed that you might be replacing some windows soon. I might be able to help. Now, first, how long did you move into the home, sir? Oh, we actually just moved in like a month ago. Oh, wow. Well, congratulations. Looks like I caught you at like a crazy time. That's amazing. Where'd you move from, sir? We actually moved down from Florida. You moved from Florida right before the winter. You're crazy, sir. You got to be like certifiable. Why'd you do that? Oh, for work. Our job moved us up here. We got family up here too and whatnot. So, wow, sir. Well, that's a big move. That's a big move. So, look, I'm sorry. I know you're probably busy, but I won't take a ton of your time. I just want to point out a couple things here, sir, walking up. Now, I know you haven't been in the house for a long time at all. So I just want to point out, did you notice, and you might see this down in Florida a lot because of the high temperatures. Did you notice the warping in the top panes of glass here, sir? No, man, I don't pay much attention to the windows, to be honest. I never really thought about it. Okay. Well, these are definitely replacement vinyl windows, sir. Now, what looks like it's happening here is that the material's kind of expanded and contracted a little bit. And that's why you see this warping in the glass. You see how it looks like a funhouse mirror? Now, over time, that window will crack. That being said, I would ask you if you felt drafts in the wintertime, but you haven't been here for a winter. So I'm going to suggest that you probably will feel drafts in the wintertime because of a problem like this. Okay. Now, sir, another thing I want to point out was, these windows, they're put into the home as replacements, right? But they're put into this old wooden frame, okay? Now, what will happen, sir, you see these two little holes down at the bottom of each, and you guys can't see them here, but they're right here and right here. Probably, there's going to be some drainage system there. That's where I would suggest that they probably are. You see these two little holes down here, sir? Those are called weep holes, okay? They're meant to drain the water out of the vinyl window, right? So it doesn't just sit in the sill there. Unfortunately, those get clogged often, sir, and often the water kind of goes where it wants when the windows start warping like this. And so that water will actually work its way into the frames of your older wooden windows. Okay. That being said, I noticed some wear on the wood and maybe even some rotting. Obviously you noticed that when you came in, right? No, I mean I never paid attention to that. I never saw that before. Okay, sir. Yeah, and a lot of times home inspectors won't point out problems like this. With the windows, a lot of times they just don't know what to look for. Okay. That being said, sir, you did lose a lot of glass space here too. Whenever they put these replacement vinyl windows in, that's what will happen. Okay. It looks like, you're going to have to do something with the windows at some point in time. So may I make a suggestion? Okay. So not much different than the original conversation there, because there's not a million problems here to point out with these windows. Okay. But look, listen to that conversation a couple of times. I want you to have a basic conversation about the windows, okay? Just a basic conversation. I have to end this, go put my daughters to bed, but I'll talk to you guys soon, okay? I'll put this video up here. I'll try to get done a wood window one before Monday, but this should be the focus right now, is having a basic, simple conversation. I'm going to send you guys the pictures of these windows too, so you get all these pictures, all right? You're going to see all that stuff, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday, okay? Script and rebuttals first, window problems second.